Wondering how your mindset affects your life? How to bring more energy into your business and life? Millions of people around the world ask these same questions daily. You are in the right place. Learn practices that will help give your life the meaning and success you've been searching for. Welcome to the Charge Podcast, teaching you how to create habits around real goals every day. Practical life advice from those who made it. Here's your host, Gary Wilbers.
It is great when someone sends you an email about the book you just published. Here's what they said. This book strikes at the heart of using the gifts God has given you, not only to be the best version of yourself, but also in being a steward that helps others find their best selves. Thanks, Mark Register, for sharing that with our listeners. As you know, my book recently launched as an Amazon bestseller. Cultivate Positive Culture, 10 Actions of Faithful Living is now available for purchase. As a listener to the Charge Podcast, I would love for you to get a copy of the book. I hear they make great stocking stuffers. You can go where you purchase books, or better yet, go to my site and order the book directly from us, and I will give you free shipping and handling since you are helping us with sharing our message to others. Just go to cultivatepositiveculture.com to get your copy today. Thanks for supporting the Charge Podcast by purchasing the book directly from us. Remember, all the details about ordering is at chargepodcast.com, where Chris does a great job sharing all the notes about the upcoming podcast. Check them out. The countdown is on, and we are 1 month from ending the first year of this decade of the 20s. Wow. I don't think any of us imagined 2020 would be the year of the pandemic. I know it has been a challenging year, but as Chargers, we have to get up each day and realize our choices make us who we are each day. In this final month of 2020, we have guests that will help you get clarity in your life, start to make a nutrition plan that will impact your health, steps to building a legendary life, and what you need to do to build mental performance. If you are feeling frustrated and stressed out with your professional or personal life, I know in each of these podcasts, the strategies that each guest shares can propel you to live a charged life in 2021. Chargers, are you committed to finding how each day they can make their life better by their willingness to learn, grow, and become the person you were meant to be? I think this quote I coined in my new book, Cultivate Positive Culture. Give yourself permission to charge each day to become the person you were meant to be. You made a great choice in listening to this podcast. Remember, the podcast is named Charge after my mantra, create habits around real goals every day. Let's get recharged in this podcast to influence a positive culture today so you can make the choices to be positive each day. Are you ready? Welcome, Chargers. We're glad to have you back again this week with another great guest. I love sharing different perspectives each and every week to give you different viewpoints. And this week, I think you are really going to enjoy our guest today, Ryan Carr. Ryan's purpose is to live with passion, presence, and optimism and positively impact people to maximize their potential so that we can all create and live the life we love. He currently works as the Sport Performance Supervisor at Barton Health in South Lake Tahoe. Prior to Barton, Ryan was a performance and strength and conditioning coach at Princeton University, Seton Hall University, Iona College, and the University of Hartford. Carr is a certified mental performance consultant through the Association for Applied Sports Psychology, earned his master's degree in sports psychology, and is currently pursuing a doctorate degree in sport and performance psychology, focusing on positive leadership administration. Now, I can tell you, I'm going to enjoy this conversation right out because I love what Ryan is doing and what he's learning and what he's going to be able to share with you, the Chargers. So, Ryan, welcome to the Charge Podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm very excited to be here. I appreciate it.
Well, it is going to be a great conversation. We got to have a conversation before, was actually introduced through a mutual friend of ours. And right away, after I had a conversation about 5 minutes in, I said, I've got to get Ryan on the Charge podcast because he's got some great information to share with our guests. And I call my listeners the Chargers. So they kind of want to get charged up, and I think it fits right in the area that's really your passion and purpose. But before we get started with our conversation, I ask every guest the same question. My mantra is charge, create habits around real goals every day. So I love getting different perspectives. What do you think is your habits that has made you successful in life, Ryan?
Yeah, well, having a background in strength and conditioning, obviously fitness and strength training and conditioning and just overall physical health, I think you cannot ignore that when it comes to mental health and mental well-being and just achieving the most out of yourself. So exercising at a very intense level most days of the week is super helpful for me. And I combine that with waking up early. You know, I find that I have to compete with myself and push myself outside of my comfort levels. So exercising is one way to do that, and waking up early to do it to make sure it's a priority within my day is huge. And the older I've gotten, the more I've realized I add in some time there for some mindfulness, you know, doing some mobility work, do a little bit of breath work, and just making sure that I'm really allowing myself to be in the present moment. That's what starts my day off right.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. I think if people just realize that physical fitness actually gives you mental fitness. And
absolutely,
that's the thing we have to really get people convinced of. And when that happens, great things do start to really happen there. Well, you work a lot with high performance and high performance athletes, but I'm kind of curious, when we think about high performance and high performers, what really is the difference, or what is the similarities in athletes and high performers do you see that you've seen in your work?
Yeah, a lot of similarities. And you know what's really fun is, again, the more I move on to my career, the more I look back 15 years ago at athletes I coached, and now I see where they are in their career. And there's so many parallels, you know, hard work, dedication, making sure that all the attention to details, the showing up on time, and making sure that tasks are completed to the very best of your ability. All those things are embedded into athletics. And as soon as you move out of that into the business world, it only rings more true, right? Is waking up early, getting there, being the first one there, working hard. But probably one of the most important things that I've really started to implement over the past 5 or 10 years is joy, and just enjoying the process. You know, athletes who are the most successful, they have so much fun when they're playing. They really enjoy training. They love the grind, so to speak. So I think within our everyday business or work environment, making sure that you're finding those little glimmers of hope and enjoyment. And oftentimes, I think the best way to do that is through people and your coworkers and those that you serve.
Yeah, I think that becomes the real key. You and I had a conversation when we first met, and I was asking you, what's one thing that, you know, if I told my son he's not the elite fastest guy, he's not the best that's there. And you talked about some of them same strategies then, is really about, you know, are you enjoying what you're doing? And do you have the best attitude? And are you working on the things that you can control? And I think with Chargers, that's what I like to always express to them. Are you controlling what you can control? Because there's certain things out of control. This year, 2020 has been a very unique year, but
Absolutely.
You're not the only one in that boat. Everyone's been in it. But the thing is, you can either get stressed, or you can decide, I'm going to control what I can control and move forward. And I'm curious just what you've seen with people when they do that. What makes the big difference in the athlete side of it that really allows them to be a better performer when it comes game time?
Yeah, like you mentioned, the controllables and understanding and really listing those things out and having a routine around every performance is absolutely critical, right? Because say I'm going into a job interview or a national championship game, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It's stressful, right? And how I perceive that situation as a challenge or a threat, that's going to either increase my stress exponentially, or I'm going to be able to manage it. So having those routines that allow you to focus on the controllables, taking a deep breath, having 1, 2, or 3 words that you say to yourself, and then doing a physical action is a great way to do it. So one of my elite snowboarders I've recently been working in, before he goes on a run, it's, okay, 3 deep breaths. Then he says, I got this. And then a clap of the hands. and off he goes. But having that routine prior to going in to whatever the situation might be can allow us to have something that we're familiar with and allow us to really be successful in that moment.
Yeah. So it allows you to put yourself in that moment, and we can do that. You don't have to be an athlete. What Ryan's sharing with us, we can do that as individuals. We get in a stressful situation in work. What's your routine that you can do to bring yourself, really, it's about to bring yourself mindful in that moment. Well, the same thing happens in the area of when they're dealing with mistakes. And I'm kind of curious when, there are mistakes, what's some challenges or ways that they can help themselves overcome that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think number one is you can look one of two ways. You can point your finger or you can look in the mirror with any mistake and any situation. And being an athlete myself, my position, I was a goalkeeper in soccer, right? Last line of defense. The ball goes in the net. Who's everybody looking at? They're looking at you. So I learned at a young age, you've got to look at yourself first and understand what can I have done better in that situation. And then who can I surround myself with to support me and the team so that we can improve. So maybe that doesn't happen again. And so that we can just get through it a lot quicker. And then back to our point of routines, having a mistake ritual is absolutely critical. When something does go wrong, again, having that 1, 2, or 3 words, that physical action and your breath, just going back to that can get you back in the present moment so you can bounce back.
Yeah. And I think that's the key. And we have to realize mistakes are going to happen, but how we recover becomes the real key. And you hear that in sports all the time, but now in the workplace, that is so true because the business world is moving at such a rapid pace that if you really rely or think back and only concern yourself with the past, you're not going to be moving forward. So what do you got to do to be able to move forward there? And it really comes into this area of mental performance. And I'm curious because I'm doing a little work right now with some positive intelligence side of it too, Ryan, and I'm kind of curious to get your take on what you're really learning and what you're kind of putting out in that area of mental performance.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would call mental performance is really the art of performing at your best when you need it most and doing that consistently. So it's a field of sport performance psychology. That's what I'm doing my doctorate degree in right now. And utilizing things like goal setting, routines, self-talk, arousal management, understanding what your optimum level of arousal is going into any situation. I always relate it to, do you need to listen to hard rock or hip hop music before you go into the boardroom and deliver that pitch or have that speech or give that presentation? Or do you need to simmer it down and listen to some smooth jazz or some reggae music? Everybody's on a different level on that continuum, and understanding where you need to be at is critical so that you can be at your peak performance when it's needed most.
Yeah. And I think the thing people forget about is they see mental performance. And I don't think we've really dug in that enough that people truly understand what that means. And some of it is you talked from the very get-go of your routines of exercise that sets you in a better mental state for the day. But it's also what you're doing throughout the day, at lunchtime, are you eating at your desk and you're trying to plow through something else? And you're not giving yourself those breaks and those routines that you need to really nourish yourself to really make yourself more comfortable. And then you've talked several times about this, and I'm just curious because, mindfulness and being present in that present moment is a real challenge with all the distractions that are out there. We know how important it is on the sports field, but in the business world, that's becoming a huge really competitive advantage, people that can really get themselves into a mindfulness state at the right times. Because sometimes it may be during the board meeting that they actually have to have that mindfulness. So I'm curious with mindfulness, what have you seen and what's your advantages that you see people that are really understand that the difference that it makes?
Yeah, you brought up a really good point, and that is taking breaks. And if I have a 2-hour time slot, I'm going to do much better. And I mean, it's research-based. There's no denying it. I'm going to do much better if I take a 10-minute break after 45 minutes or so, or an hour max, right? Get up, walk around, clear the mind, go grab a sip of water, do a couple stretches, but change your physical state, right? Especially if you're sitting. So just get up and take a break, walk away from it. And then the other thing that I think is critical is there's two things I always ask my performers when they show up to any training session, whether that be a sport training session, a business training session, is two questions. What time is it and where are we? And we always start with that. Before we even say hello, Johnny, what time is it? And the answer that I want is it's now. And then where are we? Here. Okay. And just asking yourself that question or writing it down on your laptop. What time is it? Where am I? Right here and now is huge. And I think sneaking things in throughout your day that allow you to pause and reflect, like maybe just 5 minutes of some stretching or yoga in the morning, or taking a walk at lunchtime, or taking a walk with the family in the evening. But have some consistent things that you do throughout the day to allow you to have that 5 or 10 minute break. It doesn't have to be an hour, but if you think about it, if you do 10 minutes a day of yoga or meditation or a walk over the course of a week, you have over an hour now that you just did that, which is really healthy for us.
Yeah. And I think that's the key, and people not realizing they've got to take that time. That becomes key. I mean, I'm doing 4 podcasts. I cut these ahead of time, but I do them normally in one day. But today I've got them back to back to back. And what I did just as I finished my last one, I went in and did about a 3 to 5 minute mindfulness and just kind of got present in the moment, because I want a conversation with Ryan to be there. Otherwise, I'm still thinking back to that last conversation that I had. Instead, it's about being in that present moment with that person right there. And I think that becomes the real key. And we've heard a lot about it in sports, but now you're hearing in the business world the difference that it makes and what mental fitness makes, because it makes you a better, higher performer in the workplace. And it allows you to move forward.
If I could touch on that,
Sure.
the real terminology in the sport performance psychology world around it is being in flow state.
Mm-hmm.
Or you might hear it called being in the zone.
Yep.
And athletes, it's a very elusive thing. I kind of compare it to like catching water. It's slipping through your hands. It's really challenging to get there, but you have the best chance of getting in the flow state, or when athletes feel like, man, that game was just effortless. I'm a basketball player and everything just seemed to be falling into the net, right? I never got tired. I felt like I was floating. It's because they're in the present moment. They are so focused in the here and now. But you have to practice. It takes a lot of practice in order for you to get there and concentrate and understand that distractions are going to try and come in. The idea is not to try and block them out, but rather acknowledge them without judging them, and then come back to the present moment.
Yeah. Excellent advice. Thanks for sharing that. Now, what do you do to prioritize your day that would really help people look at how they should look at prioritizing their day and really to be able to be that performer that they want to be in life?
Yeah, for me, it starts on the weekend. Sunday, I review my goals, and I look at big outcome goals. Where do I want to be 5-10 years from now? I look at performance goals, things that measure me and myself. And then I look at process goals. And process goals are right now, relax your breath, control your breathing, okay? Take a deep breath, or just the things that you control in your everyday today. So for me, it starts with reflecting on the previous week and then projecting out what I want to do in the week to come. So then I write everything down that's really important, that's meaningful, that I can control. And then I piece it into my calendar, and I put the most important things that need to get done. They're put on Monday or Tuesday. And then as the week goes on, the things that would be good to get done, they're put to Thursday, Friday, or Saturday. And then I make sure on a daily basis, I choose one thing each day, no more than one really big thing that I need to get done. And I focus, and I do that first within the day, as long as, time permits. But I try and knock it out first rather than waiting till the ideal time. I try and do it before, because inevitably distractions come up and will try and throw us off our game.
Yeah. And for most people, even if they say they're not a morning person, your energy level in the morning is higher, your cognitive ability is higher, and it allows you to work through that challenge or that project that you have really at a quicker pace, where if you wait at the end of the day, you're a little more tired, your brain's a little more tired, you've got some of those challenges there to how do you move it forward. Well,
yeah,
we didn't have this set up, but you kind of said in the opening I put down that you're currently pursuing that doctorate degree in sports and performance psychology and focusing on positive leadership administration. So I'm kind of curious, when you look at your longer term goals, Ryan, what's some of that? What do you see that's going to be for yourself as you move forward?
Yeah, for me personally, once I complete my doctorate, I want to be teaching at the university level in sport performance psychology. And then I want to be consulting with NCAA Division I and professional teams and professional organizations just around the country. So traveling in, going in for 3 to 5 days, observing their training, meeting with the coaches, seeing what the players are doing, and then bouncing ideas on how they can maybe improve it a little bit, while still serving our community here in South Lake Tahoe.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. The reason I ask that is, positive leadership and positive psychology is really, over the last 10 years, is really taken a whole different aspect. And the interesting part is it's really moved from, not just sports into the business world and into our leadership. And we're seeing the trends where, used to, it was the leader, the hard-ass leader was the one that won always the time. Yeah. And then it was the hard-ass leader that was the bad boss, and stuff. But what they found out is actually now with positive leadership is actually the person that shows the positive leadership accomplishes more than the folks that think it's the old dictator style of leadership.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think you attract a lot more people with honey.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, and people, going back to my first point of people are more joyful then, right? Let's create a positive, exciting experience while we're at work. And guess what? That can still be demanding, right? We can still have really high standards and push people, but we can do it in a way where we challenge, we demand a lot out of them. But here's the key, is that we're supporting them and we're giving them the skills to really thrive in those environments. Because it's one thing to demand a lot out of people and say, hey, just go get it done. It's a very different thing to demand a ton out of people and then put your arm around them and say, hey, I'm right here in the trenches with you. And the example I go to is working with basketball teams, NCAA basketball teams in the past, was we would have some really hard practices. And the best coaches that I've ever worked with, they were right at the baseline when players finished a sprint. And as a player was putting their hands on their knees or saying, I can't do this, they were whispering in their ear, hey, you got this, just one more stride. And they wouldn't make the practice any easier on purpose. Rather, it would be harder, but they would support them through that.
Yeah. And that becomes a real key. And as a leader, if you're in the business world, or how do I apply that? It's the same thing. This project is tough, but we're going to figure out together, and you're going to be along with them on the process to be able to make it happen. Well, some great discussion. I love talking about this because positive psychology, and it all fits into what I call culture. And I think I shared with you, I wrote a book called Positive Culture Wins. I've got my next book coming out, and it's Cultivate Positive Culture, 10 Actions to Faithful Living. And I think it's about this culture. And what you're doing is you're creating an environment. And that's the thing, is you can take this personally with your own self. What's that environment that you want to take? Or what's the environment if you're working or you're in a sports team or you're in an organization? And that culture becomes the key. And I guess that's the kind of, I don't have a set question for this, but more or less kind of get your feeling on how does that positive culture impact everything that we've talked about up to this point?
Yeah, I think negative or positive culture, they're very infectious, right?
Yeah,
when you walk into an organization, the feel from the first person that you see. The person who's sweeping the floors or working the front desk, you get a sense on what that culture is. And a lot of it for me comes down to like mental toughness, and creating that. That's my ideal situation. My dissertation's on mental toughness and how can we create resilience within an organization, have high standards, allow people to perceive challenging situations as just that, challenging, not threats, and also have this just beautiful thread of optimism rolling through that culture. And I think it starts with the leaders. And I always go to the 3 Ps: people, product, and paper. You've got to start with the people first, right? You've got to start by just creating amazing relationships and then create an amazing product. And then all the paperwork and the things that we have to get done. Yeah, but you've got to start with the people first, because if the people aren't motivated and excited to be there, then nothing else really matters.
Yeah, that's for sure. Ryan, as we start to wrap up and kind of get in that recharge round, I kind of am going to leave it open availability here. And what would you like to say? Let's first start with, we'll give you a two-part question. It won't be really a question, but what would you like to tell athletes that some of the things that would help them really think about their performance and how they can use the mental fitness and some of those things we spoke about to be a better athlete? Let's start with them, and then we're going to talk about also in the workplace.
Absolutely. First thing is, in every situation, you have a choice. You have a choice to decide how you're going to view that situation, even if it's a really challenging one. So you can view it as, hey, this is a challenge, but I'm optimistic I'm going to get through it. Or you can view it as, this is something I can't accomplish, or really negatively.
Okay. Now, if you talked about the person that's in the workplace and they're looking at for themselves, how can they take the positive psychology, all the information, all that education that you're getting, and you sum that up to them? What would you tell them?
Yeah, I'd say just start small. Start small with taking care of yourself and those around you, your physical health and your mental health. Take breaks and enjoying the journey.
Yeah, that's the key, because every day goes around. We're in fourth quarter of 2020 already, and that's how fast time flies. And the thing is, we can't control everything, but what we can control is what is in our sphere of influence, and that becomes the real key. Ryan, I truly appreciate you joining the Charge podcast. We've still got a recharge round, but before we go there, why don't you share how they could touch base with you if they want to learn more about you and maybe contact you?
Absolutely. You can find me on my website, which is Carr Driven Performance, CARR Driven Performance. And I'm also on Instagram at Carr, CARR _driven _performance. So I'd love for you to hit me up on any of those.
Okay, great. And we will have that in notes under chargepodcast.com. So don't hesitate to go to that. And if you're running right now, hopefully we've got some people that's exercising. We've helped motivate them through that exercise. So if you're doing that or you're driving, we have all that in show notes under chargepodcast.com. Now I'm going to ask you in the recharge round 6 kind of rapid fire questions to get your take. We've talked about some of this, but we'll kind of tie it directly there. How do you believe your mindset affects your daily living?
It all starts with intention. Anything you're going to start with, have intention with what you're doing.
Great. How about, we talked about what can create energy by doing exercise, but what do you do when you don't have that energy and you only have, a shorter amount of time, or throughout the day, you're low on energy?
Switch your viewpoint. Rather than worry about being 100%. If you're only at 80%, focus on getting 100% out of your 80%.
Ooh, I like that. That is good. Thank you. How about the number one relationship or connection that's made the biggest impact on your life?
Definitely my wife and my immediate family.
Yeah.
My 2 little boys.
2 boys? How old are they?
One is 2 years old. The other is 15 days old.
Oh, wow. Congratulations. Boy, you got a busy household right now.
That's it.
What advice has influenced you the most in your life?
Excuses are the nails in the house of failure.
Oh, say it again. Excuses are the nails in the house of failure?
Yep. If you're trying to build a house of success, eliminate excuses.
Oh, wow. That's a good one. How about your favorite book and why you love it?
The Alchemist. Just an amazing journey, and I feel like we're all on our own journey, and I just love it.
Yeah, I talk about that some in my book that I recently wrote that's out, Cultivate Positive Culture. It's really, too many people think it's the destination. It's really about the journey that we're living on. Each one of us are on a different journey, but if you enjoy the journey, like you've talked about multiple times, it makes getting there so much more fun. How about the last question for you? You've done a great job there, but what legacy do you want to leave the world?
I want to leave people feeling like they can maximize their potential, whatever that might be, and to have fun during that process.
Well, you sure have helped people think about what their potential can be and really realizing that there's science behind what we're talking about. You know, as Ryan is talking about getting his doctorate in this, we're learning so much more about positive psychology and positive leadership and what it's doing to the world and that performance area of what it makes a difference in the performance area. And I think that's the real key, is people to realize that there's science behind this. It's not fluff. I think when it first came out, too many people thought it was all this fluff. Instead, there's science behind it. It shows that the performance happens there. And Ryan, I can't thank you enough for joining us on the Charge podcast.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. This is a blast.
Share with them one more time that website address and how they can reach out to you.
Yeah, they can reach me at Carr Driven Performance, CARR. And then on Instagram, Carr_driven_performance.
Well, Chargers, I hope you are charged up, and I hope you are ready to improve your performance after this conversation. And the question I would ask you, you've heard a lot of information. What is the one thing that you're going to do? Instead of thinking about, oh, that was a really good podcast, now how am I going to apply it? How are you going to apply it in your life and really move forward for yourself to put yourself in that flow state or in the zone that you want to be each and every time? Ryan, thanks again, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you very much.
Chargers, I hope you're ready to go. Make it a great day, and we'll be back here next week. Here's a short description of the book, Cultivate Positive Culture. Lloyd, a truck driver from Forward Trucking, Inc., has a random encounter with death while making his way back home. Lloyd, who is short on faith and options, finds himself in the largest downward spiral of his life. He meets an unexpected traveler who sees something in him that Lloyd couldn't find on his own. Together, through a new sense of faith and reason, Lloyd discovers his life's calling. I'm so excited to launch this book, and I appreciate your help. Remember, get your copy today at cultivatepositiveculture.com. Thanks for supporting the book.
This podcast is ended, but your life doesn't just stop. To continue your inspiring journey, head over to chargepodcast.com and access all the tools and resources mentioned on today's show. If you enjoyed this episode, consider sharing with somebody who may also benefit from the advice provided. That's chargepodcast.com. Until next time, charge in business and life.